Welcome, horror lovers. I'm Pete, and today we're going to embark on a journey through some of the darkest legends in the world. If you're new here, subscribe and activate notifications so you don't miss any terrifying stories.
The leprechaun is one of the most enduring and fascinating figures in Irish folklore, a mischievous, cunning, and mysterious creature who has remained a significant part of the cultural imagination of Ireland through the centuries. Behind the stories of his tricks and love of gold, there lies a rich tradition that stretches from ancient Celtic mythology to modern-day depictions. This detailed exploration dives into the origins, myths, sightings, and evolving stories of the leprechaun. The leprechaun's origins can be traced back to the early writings of Ireland, particularly the ancient Irish texts from the 8th and 9th centuries. The name leprechaun itself comes from the Old Irish word lepreachan, which is believed to derive from luchorpan, a combination of luch, small, and orpan, body, essentially meaning small body, or little man. Although the word leprechaun became popular much later, the first references to creatures similar to leprechauns appear in early Irish texts, like the Book of Invasions, Leab har Gabala Arian, from the 9th century. These early references didn't mention the leprechaun as we know him today. Instead, they described small beings from the supernatural realm, often referred to as the Ioc, people of the hills, or fairy folk. These were mythological beings connected to nature, the land, and the otherworld, residing in places of spiritual significance such as hills, mounds, and lakes. However, over the centuries, the leprechaun evolved from a more serious, supernatural figure into a small, playful, and somewhat trickster-like character, diverging from its more traditional fairy roots. The Ioc were considered ethereal, mystical beings, sometimes gods or spirits, tied to sacred sites and hidden in the land's secret places. Leprechauns, in this sense, were smaller, less threatening versions of these otherworldly creatures, wielding their own set of tricks, illusions, and magical powers. Over time, the image of the leprechaun solidified in Irish folklore. Today, the leprechaun is typically depicted as a small humanoid figure about a meter, or around 3 feet tall, with red hair, a thick beard, wearing a green jacket, a felt hat, and wide trousers. His behavior is often described as mischievous, cunning, and sly. However, before the leprechaun assumed the form we recognize today, he was depicted differently in older myths. In the earliest stories, the leprechaun was not necessarily a cute or comical character, but rather a more grim and somewhat grotesque figure. Some accounts from the medieval period portrayed the leprechaun as a small, solitary being, often described as a shoemaker or a craftsman, reflecting the word lepreachan itself, which might be connected to the profession of cobbling shoes. The association with the color green, which is so commonly linked to the leprechaun today, was a later development, coming about in the 19th century. The green clothing became symbolic not only because of the natural landscape of Ireland, known for its verdant fields, but also due to the strong associations with St. Patrick's Day, a celebration of Irish culture. This connection helped solidify the image of the green-clad leprechaun as a national symbol. The gold and the rainbow, the leprechaun's treasure. One of the most enduring myths about the leprechaun is his treasure, gold hidden at the end of the rainbow. According to legend, every leprechaun is said to have a pot of gold stashed away, hidden in a secret location, often found at the end of a rainbow. If a human captures a leprechaun, they are supposedly granted the chance to find the gold, as long as they can get the leprechaun to reveal its location. But as with many Irish legends, the leprechaun is crafty and difficult to catch. The stories typically go like this. If someone manages to catch a leprechaun, the creature will offer them 3 wishes in exchange for their freedom. However, being highly intelligent and sly, the leprechaun rarely honors the wishes as promised. In many versions of the tale, the leprechaun uses his magical powers to escape from his captor, often by turning invisible or creating illusions to confuse them. The moral of the story, as in many Irish myths, is that greed will not be rewarded, and that wealth gained in such a way will only lead to misfortune. The idea of the leprechaun guarding treasure at the end of the rainbow is one of the most popular images of the character, especially during the global celebrations of St. Patrick's Day. However, in older versions of the legend, gold was not the only treasure the leprechaun guarded. He was also associated with luck, both good and bad, depending on how he was treated. Tales and witness accounts of leprechaun sightings. While most stories about the leprechaun are clearly rooted in folklore, there have been occasional reports or witness accounts of people claiming to have seen these creatures throughout the years. However, these testimonies are often vague, contradictory, or shrouded in mystery, adding to the aura of legend that surrounds the leprechaun. One of the most famous stories comes from the 17th century, where a witness in the Wicklow Mountains of Ireland claimed to have encountered a leprechaun. The story goes that the witness spotted the leprechaun in a clearing, busily working as a cobbler. When the man tried to approach him, the leprechaun saw him and disappeared, leaving only a trail of leaves and shadows. Other sightings appeared throughout the 19th century, during a period of cultural revival in Ireland, when there was renewed interest in the nation's folklore. Many of these reports came from rural areas, isolated in the countryside, where the stories of the leprechaun were still strong. The tales often emphasized how elusive the leprechaun was, always difficult to catch and even harder to pin down. Some accounts spoke of seeing leprechauns near lakes or mounds, areas that were traditionally associated with the Aussie and the otherworld. These accounts, often passed down by storytellers, added to the mythic nature of the leprechaun, blurring the line between reality and fantasy. Irish oral tradition, preserved by the Sean-Chaí, traditional storytellers, also played a huge role in keeping the legend alive. Every storyteller added their own twists to the tale, embellishing details of encounters with leprechauns, making them either more mischievous or more cunning. These tales became a central part of Ireland's cultural heritage, the leprechaun in popular culture. Over time, the leprechaun became increasingly ingrained in popular culture, especially in representations of Ireland and the global celebration of St. Patrick's Day. The mischievous little man with a pot of gold became a symbol of luck and celebration, with his image softening into a more playful character, rather than the more sinister figure he was once considered. The famous Lucky Charms cereal mascot, for example, presents the leprechaun as a cheerful, fun-loving character who is obsessed with guarding his Lucky Charms, a far cry from the trickster in the older legends. In other media, however, such as the horror movie Leprechaun, 1993, the character is reimagined as a darker, more malevolent being, reflecting his dual nature as both a symbol of fun and a reminder of the perils of greed and trickery. The leprechaun also appears in literature, theater, and even in advertisements, with each depiction contributing to the evolution of this enigmatic figure. Over time, the leprechaun shifted from being a figure of cautionary tales to a more universally recognized symbol of Irish culture, linked to both the magic of the land and the universal human desire for treasure and luck. Conclusion: the leprechaun's legacy. The leprechaun remains one of the most iconic figures in Irish folklore. From his early roots as a small supernatural being linked to the AOC to his transformation into the trickster who guards pots of gold, the leprechaun continues to captivate imaginations around the world. Whether viewed as a playful figure or a more sinister one, the leprechaun embodies both the magic and the cautionary lessons of the Irish tradition, reminding us that wealth, luck, and trickery are often more fleeting than they appear. The tale of the Mula Sem Cabeça, the headless mule, is one of the most pervasive and chilling legends in Brazilian folklore. The legend finds its roots in colonial Brazil, where it merged a mix of indigenous, African, and Portuguese cultural elements. It is a story born from superstition, religion, and a deep-seated fear of the supernatural. At its core, the legend tells of a woman who, through sin or punishment, transforms into a creature resembling a mule, doomed to wander the earth in a terrifying, headless state. The origins of the story vary, but many versions share certain commonalities, particularly the idea that the transformation is linked to moral transgression, often involving illicit relationships or acts of defiance against God. According to most versions, the woman who becomes the Mulasem Cabeza is typically a devout, God-fearing individual who becomes involved in an affair with a priest or violates some other religious norm. As punishment for her sins, she is cursed by divine forces to become a headless mule, a monstrous creature that roams the night, emitting a horrifying scream and leaving a trail of fire in its wake. The transformation and punishment. The legend often begins with a young, beautiful woman, sometimes a servant, a peasant, or a noblewoman, who is either seduced by or has an affair with a priest. In some versions, it is suggested that the woman is married and her betrayal is seen as a terrible sin. In others, the illicit nature of the affair alone is enough to bring divine wrath. In most versions, the punishment is particularly severe because it is believed that women, especially those of faith, are expected to remain virtuous and pure. In a symbolic sense, the transformation represents the ultimate degradation of virtue, as a headless animal is a grotesque inversion of the human form. It is an expression of total loss of self and sanctity. The transformation is often depicted as swift and horrifying. According to some accounts, the woman's head bursts into flames, and her entire body morphs into that of a mule, with a fiery tail and blazing eyes. The creature then gallops through the night, with the haunting sound of hooves reverberating in the distance. In some tales, the fire from the creature's body illuminates the night, while in others, the Mulasem Cabeza is a terrifying shadow moving silently through the darkness. Over the centuries, numerous people have claimed to have witnessed the Mulasem Cabeza, or to have experienced strange phenomena that they attributed to the creature. Most of these reports, however, come from rural areas of Brazil where the legend remains particularly strong. One of the most famous cases dates back to the 1940s in the rural region of Minas Gerais. A farmer's daughter, whose name remains unknown, was said to have been seen by several people near her home on a dark, moonless night. Witnesses reported seeing a large, headless mule galloping past, emitting a screeching noise that sounded like a woman in agony. The most disturbing part of the account was the fact that the animal seemed to leave a trail of fire as it ran. It was only the next morning that locals discovered that the woman had vanished without a trace, and her family claimed to have heard strange noises throughout the night. Some villagers believed she had been cursed for an undisclosed affair and transformed into the Mulasem Cabeza. Others, more skeptical, attributed the event to a local wildfire. Another testimony comes from a small town in the northeast of Brazil, in the state of Pernambuco. It was in the early 1900s when a group of churchgoers claimed to have witnessed a terrifying sight after Mass one evening. A young woman, apparently dressed in white, walked toward the church, only to suddenly be enveloped by a whirlwind. Her body reportedly contorted, and she vanished, leaving behind a headless mule galloping into the hills. Several witnesses swore they heard loud, anguished cries during the event, but when they ran outside, they found nothing. The local priest, who was known for being stern and devout, later claimed that the woman had been involved in a secret, illicit relationship, which was the cause of her transformation. In more recent years, a strange incident was reported near the Serra da Mantiqueira mountains, which separate the states of Minas Gerais and São Paulo. A group of hikers who had camped overnight on the mountain trail woke up to find their campfire had been mysteriously extinguished. The hikers reported hearing a strange sound during the night, a screeching cry that echoed through the dense woods. The following morning, they discovered that their tent had been scorched, and some of their equipment had been left mysteriously scattered. No one saw anything, but the hikers were left shaken by the unexplained events. Locals claimed that the area was known for sightings of the Mulasem Cabeza, particularly during the full moon, when the creature was said to wander in search of souls to punish. The apparition of São João Nepomuceno, 1970s. One of the most well-known contemporary accounts of the Mulasem Cabeza occurred in the 1970s in the small town of São João Nepomuceno, also in Minas Gerais. A family claimed to have been cursed after the daughter was discovered having an affair with a local priest. According to reports, The woman was later found wandering the streets late at night, screaming in agony. Neighbors recounted seeing a headless mule with glowing eyes galloping down the narrow roads surrounding the town. The creature reportedly left scorch marks on the ground and was seen several nights in a row. Eventually, the woman's family was said to have moved away from the town, but the legend persisted, with locals attributing the strange events to the Mula Sem Cabeça. Though the legend of the Mula Sem Cabeça has its origins in rural Brazil, it has also left its mark on Brazilian pop culture. The figure of the headless mule has appeared in literature, theater, music, and even television, where it is often portrayed as a terrifying supernatural being capable of wreaking havoc on anyone who crosses its path. In the modern era, the Mula Sem Cabeça has become a symbol of divine retribution and moral punishment, a reminder of the consequences of transgressing societal or religious norms. The legend of the Mula Sem Cabeça continues to live on, deeply embedded in Brazilian folklore. Though its stories vary from one region to another, the central theme remains the same: a powerful punishment for sin, embodied in the form of a headless, fiery mule. Whether a tale of superstition, a warning against moral decay, or an embodiment of divine justice, the Mula Sem Cabeça is a figure that has captivated the imaginations of generations and continues to haunt the night in the folklore of Brazil. The line between legend and reality remains blurred, with countless witnesses and testimonies adding to the chilling allure of this eerie creature. What do you think about this? Leave your opinion in the comments and don't forget to follow the channel for more legends.